Good evening, everyone. I am Manali Chakraborty. First of all, I am profoundly joyous and honored to have the opportunity to welcome everyone here on behalf of Modak Trainer Academy. Today's topic of discussion is Mythical Histories, Subterranean Past, Kalapahar in Bengal and Odisha. The eminent speaker of this topic is Professor Ishita Banerjee Dube. She is distinguished professor, researcher at the Center for Gender Studies and the Center for Asian and African Studies at El Colegio de Mexico. She is a member of the National System of Researchers. Her research draws upon ethnographic history, post-colonial gender, and subaltern studies to address themes of empire, national gender, citizenship, India and Mexico, social justice in India over the 19th to the 21st centuries, etc. Her six single authored books includes A History of Modern India, Religion, Law and Power and Divine Afference. Banerjee Dube edited the series Hinduism with the Greater Open. She has published articles in a wide range of acclaimed English and Spanish journals and book chapters in anthologies such as Subaltern Studies. She holds different prestigious posts at different universities across the globe. It's our pleasure to have her here with us. Now we request to Professor Ishita Banerjee Dube to please start her discourse.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Thank you, Malini, and good evening to everyone. My particular thanks to Dr. Gargide and Sri Ganesh Modak of Modak Trainer Academy for giving me this opportunity of sharing certain thoughts and ideas at a critical juncture in India's history and, at a critical moment of the world, let's say. So without further ado, thanks for, for all the who have joined in. It is kind of late in India, but without further ado, I will proceed to my talk. Yes. Let me just get the text. Yes. So I've called the theme of my discussion today, Mythical History, Subterranean Pass, Kalapahar in Bengal and Orissa. Kalapahar, as people from Eastern India are aware, is a metaphor and a symbol. But it's surprising that Kalapahar is not really known much beyond, let's say, Orissa, Bengal, Assam, and parts of Bihar. I'll begin my talk with two quotations. One from a collection of poems by Mohitlal Mojumdar, which is called Kalapahar, and the collection, it was a part of his compilation collection of poems called Shapno Pashari. The book is called Shapno Pashari. And I begin. Atodin por uthila ki aaj shurashur joi jugabotar মানুষের পাপ করিতে মোচন দেবতারে হানি ভীম প্রহার কলাপাহাড়. The second one is actually from an earlier text. This collection was published in 1921. The second citation is from a history of Orisharo Itihasha, that was published in 1879, and the author was Pyari Mohan Acharya. And this is also another rhyme. It goes, Aila Kola Paharo, Bhangila Luharo Baro, Pila Mahanodi Pani, Shuborno Thalire, Hera Pasharile, Mukundo Devanko Rani. I'll translate this, and if there are people who do not understand Bangla, I'll also translate the first one. So the Odia one. And there came Kalapaharo, broke down the iron fence, drank the water of Mahanadi, which is meant to be extremely sacred, and was served beef on a golden plate by the queen of Mukunda Deva. The first one, Randas, has the all-conquering incarnation of the era appeared finally to wash away the sins of humanity and strike at deities, Kolapahar. These two citations from texts of different genres, published in two consecutive centuries, the 19th and the 20th, in two neighboring states, Bengal and Orissa, offer illustrative examples of the distinct orientation towards legendary historical figures among the literati. These distinct imaginings push us to think further about the different ways in which the past and the peoples who inhabit the past are negotiated and comprehended. At a critical juncture, when the rewriting of the past has supplanted efforts to reconstruct the past, to learn about and from it, students of history face a great challenge and a dilemma. Is it possible to retain the plurality of pasts and histories, acknowledge the discrete parts of historical consciousness that include myths, and yet retain the rigor and ethics of historical inquiry in digging into and reconstructing pasts that bear great significance for the present? This dilemma, again, is tied to a constitutive tension that history contends with constantly. The tension between action and narration, or, to put it simply, the happening or event and its retrieval. History is acutely aware of the lapse of time between the occurrence and its recovery. That entails a further jumble between, I quote, the facts of the matter, unquote, and, quote again, a narration of those facts, unquote, between what happened and that which is said to have happened. This productive tension has produced rich debates about the method, content, emphasis, and pathways of history, and made history plural and inclusive, allowing for differing explorations and explications of the same events, processes, and figures, and also made it acknowledge the gaps and silences inherent in the reconstruction. Our focus on Kalapahar, a legendary actor of history, an enigmatic figure whose name evoked fear and fascination all over Eastern India till the 20th century, will allow us to explore some of these tensions and reveal how distinct orientations can lead to very different readings and understandings. Kalapahar, a liminal figure hovering between myth and history, who has come to embody vengeful iconoclasm and has functioned as a symbol and a metaphor, enables an exploration of the distinct understandings of pasts that govern their retrieval. More importantly, the diffuse and divergent legends and stories about Kalapahar offers glimmers of pasts that are never explored or dug up, and yet remain as subterranean traces. My effort tonight will be to offer vistas of these diverse perceptions of a 16th century iconoclast in historical and literary accounts, and divulge the hidden reverberations. That would offer one way of coping with the problem I indicated at the beginning, of reconstructing pasts, retaining their plurality and layered nuances that enrich our understandings of the past and the present, without discarding the rigor of historical method. The two quotes I began with highlight how the symbol and metaphor of Kalapahar circulated and caught the imagination of poets and historians in Bengal and Odisha in very different ways. To add to the tale, Girish Chandra Ghosh, the noted dramatist of 19th century Bengal, wrote a play titled Kalapahar that was staged in the Star Theatre of Kolkata on 26 September 1896. An advertisement of the play in The Statesman ran thus, and I quote, "New drama in 5 acts, Kalapahar. Faith only can lead man to God. The drama is rich in philosophic truths, clothed in the most beautifully simple language. Unquote. In this play, the main protagonist, Chintamani, was based on Ramakrishna Paramhansha and performed by Girish Ghosh. Kala Pahar, born Kala Chand in the play, was portrayed as a sensitive and mislaid soul whose act of vandalism, I quote again from a review in the Statesman, whose act of vandalism only sets the stage for his eventual redemption by Chintamani, who leads him to God through devotion. Evidently, the different deployments of Kalapahar were conditioned by the needs and processes of the time. A History of Odisha, written in 1879 in the general context of incipient nationalism and efforts to recover the pride of sacred Odisha, accentuated the vileness of Kalapahar by making the queen of Raja Mukunda Deva, whom Kalapahar is believed to have vanquished, turn into his concubine and serve him beef on a golden plate. At a later stage, the reference to the serving of beef hurt Odia sensibilities, and a later history substituted the word hera for hira, diamond, for a less offensive one, for a less offensive expression. Yeah. For the actor and playwright Girish Ghosh, Kalapahar satisfied the need of, I quote, a historical drama that he was writing at that time that heightened the glory of Ramakrishna and his path of devotion. By 1921, when nationalist enthusiasm was at a peak, the poet Mohit Lal found in Kalapahar the great incarnation who was to put an end to evil and the evil Kali Yuga by turning things upside down. What occasioned these widely divergent characterizations? There is no clear or easy answer. We can only probe further to improve our understanding. Let us turn to Odisha. What comes to mind when we speak of Odisha? Puri and the temple of Lord Jagannath, the sea that makes Puri as a site of pilgrimage doubly attractive, the Sun Temple at Konark, and other temples of unique, intricate architecture, mostly credited to rulers of the southern Bongo dynasty. In other words, images and associations that can be identified as quote unquote Hindu. Jagannath, the Lord of the universe, and the Rashtra Devata, the state deity of Odisha for centuries, has increasingly become the epitome of Odia cultural identity, with Odisha being proclaimed as a region that withstood Muslim invasion the longest. Texts on Odishan history routinely reiterate the fact that the Odishan kingdom was the last mighty Hindu kingdom to fall only 3 years after the fall of Vijayanagara in the south. Why is it important to stress the Hinduness of Odisha? Is Odisha singularly Hindu? Can Kalapahar offer some insights? Kalapahar, literally Black Mountain, with an intricate interface with Nilachal, Blue Mountain, a name frequently used for Puri, finds entry into histories of Odisha through an event of great magnitude. His attack and desecration of the temple of Jagannath, plunder of the temple treasure, the Ratno Bhandar, and possibly a subsequent burning of the images of the Jagannath Trinity. Kalapahar is significant because his attack on the temple and the destruction of the images occasions a rupture in the linear, unbroken, Jagannath-centered history of Odisha from the 12th century onwards. This spectacular event and the unthinkable act of the burning of the images transforms Kalapahar into the very embodiment of an alarming iconoclast. And I quote, who willfully destroys works of religious art. This quote is from Professor Gaganendranath Dash. who willfully destroys works of religious art and transforms Kolapahar into a metaphor of ferocity, vileness, and vengeance. What occasioned the attack? Historians such as Jadunath Sarkar contend that it was rivalry between the Mughals in Delhi and the Afghan sultans of Gaur, Bengal. Akbar, acknowledging the might of the Orishan kingdom, had entered into an alliance with Raja Mukundadeva in 1565 against their common enemy, Sultan Suleiman Karrani or Korrani of Bengal. Karrani's regime, in Sarkar's words, had acquired unwanted strength, becoming the one dominating power in northeastern India, with territories stretching from the Kutch frontier to Puri in Orissa, and from the Son to Brahmaputra. The Son river flows through what is now the Chhattisgarh region. Yes. Akbar's alliance with Mukundadeva aroused the ire of Sultan Karrani, who waited for an opportunity. And I quote again from Jadunath Sarkar. In the winter of 1567-68, when the Mughal army was occupied with the siege of Chittor, Suleiman sent an expedition to Orissa that resulted in the defeat and death of Mukundadeva. Unquote. The invading Afghan army then sent off a strong detachment under Kalapahar, alias Raju, from the neighborhood of Jajpur, which was then the capital of North Orissa, to raid the temple of Jagannath, famous for the wealth accumulated in it. I'm constantly quoting from Jagannath Sarkar. With the royal house in confusion and the people of Puri lulled into security by centuries of freedom from foreign attack, hardly any resistance was offered. On hearing of the advance of Muslims, Sarkar tells us, they are believed to have said, "What sort of strange creatures are these Musalman people? And can they have the power to harm this God?" Unquote. The historian Prabhat Mukherjee, who published a detailed account of Kolapahar in 1952 in the Orissa Historical Research Journal, coincides with Jadunath Sarkar in stating that the attack on Puri was preceded by an attack on Kotak that had resulted in the defeat and death of Raja Mukundadeva in 1568. Mukherjee, however, considers Sarkar's statement that the Musalmans were totally unknown to the inhabitants of Orissa to be unfounded. In Mukherjee's narrative, on hearing of Kalapahar's approach, Raja Divya Simha, the successor of Mukundadev, removed the images of the Jagannath Trinity from the temple and hid them in an island in the Chilika Lake. Kalapahar proceeded to the island, brought back the images, probably with the help of an Odia, and desecrated the temple at Puri. He also burnt the images and threw the remains either in the river Ganges in Bengal or in the sea near Kujango in Orissa, according to differing accounts in the Madala Ponji, the Chronicle of the Jagannath Temple, and Abul Fazl's Aini Akbari. Historians who have followed the printed edition of the Madala Panji accept that the image of Jagannath was carried to Bengal and publicly burnt on the bank of the river Hooghly. An Oriya named Bisharo Mohanty is credited with recovering the Brahma Padartho, life substance, from the bust of the image. He hid it in his drum and brought it to Kujango in southern Orissa, where it was kept and worshipped till the time it was renewed by Raja Ramchandra Deva I, the Raja of Khurda in 1590. A story that emphasizes the indestructibility of Lord Jagannath, according to Professor Harman Kulke. The manuscript of the Madala Panji that I have consulted in the archives in Bhubaneswar makes only a passing reference to Kalapahar, Allahabad, a general of Suleiman Karrani, and his attack on the temple of Jagannath in a section titled Rajbhog Itihas. Orisan texts such as the Kakata Raja Vamsavali also refer to Kalapahar, but the most flourishing accounts come from Persian sources that underwent embellishment over time. This went hand in hand with the growth of a large corpus of diverse stories, legends, and lore around Kalapahar that made him a fluid, frightening, and enthralling figure in different and contradictory relations with Hindu divinities. Tales about Kalapahar's daring destruction of Jagannath had reached such proportions over the 17th and 18th centuries that in 1788, Ghulam Hussain Salim claimed that the very sound of Kalapahar's drum made Hindu idols lose their hands and feet and ears and noses. Even in the closing years of the 18th century, stone idols with broken hands and feet and ears and noses cut off could be found in several parts of the country. This dangerous potency of Kalapahar's kettle drum also featured in Andrew Stirling's account of Orissa in 1825 and Pyari Mohan Acharya's History of Orissa published in 1879. Pyari Mohan Acharya's Orisha Itihasa was the first to affirm that Kalapahar was born a Hindu Brahmin who converted to Islam after falling in love with a Muslim princess. Acharya makes no mention of his humiliation at the hands of the Brahmins of Puri. At the same time, he claims that Kalapahar's notorious kettle drum was made with cow hide. Acharya also records the rhyme that makes his evilness graphic in the act of forcing the queen of the slain Raja Mukundadev serve beef on a golden plate. This rhyme has been repeated and reproduced over and over again in texts on Orissan history and also modified, as I mentioned earlier, in the 20th century to change Hera beef into Hira diamond to soften the blow on Oriya sensibilities. Durgacharan Shannal's Banglar Shamajik Itihas, Social History of Bengal, published in 1910, added further kinks to the Kalapahar tales. Here, the raiding and destroying of temples and idols in Bengal, Assam, and Odisha were accompanied by the abduction and rape of Hindu women. Kalapahar's zeal was such that he went as far as Kashi, Banaras, where an unexpected incident changed the course of his life. After an aunt of Kalapahar, violated by the raiding Muslims, went to him and revealed her identity, a suitably chastised Kalapahar called for an immediate stop to the desecration and devastation, and miraculously disappeared the following day. Although nothing is known for sure about his disappearance, writes Bandyopadhyay, legends hint that he had taken to the life of an ascetic to atone for his sins. Legends current in the Sambalpur region offer a distinct picture. They credit the two tutelary goddesses of the king of Sambalpur with saving the king when Kalapahar invaded his territory and laid siege to his fort. The goddesses appeared as milkmaids in Kalapahar's camp, offered poisoned curd to him and his other Muslim generals. The generals took the curd and died. This tale of triumph of the goddesses had an unexpected ending. The tombs of some of the generals killed by the guile of the goddesses turned into shrines venerated by the people of the region. The tomb of Bukhari Sahib, Sayyid Ali Bukhari, a general of Kalapahar slain during the siege of the Barabati fort in Cuttack, and not by the Devis of Sambalpur, was still a revered shrine in Kaipador of Puri district when Prabhat Mukherjee wrote his article in the early 1950s. My brief survey of Muslim shrines in the coastal regions of Orissa in 2011 and 12 also revealed that the tomb of Bukhari Sahib continued to be revered, although it had lost some of its grandeur. According to Mahtub Ali, a former minister of culture in Orissa under the Congress regime, Bukhari Sahib had actually come from Afghanistan during the reign of Ramachandra Dev I, who became the ruler of the Khurda region after Orissa had come under Mughal rule in 1592. This was also the time when Takki Khan, the son-in-law of Shujauddin of Bengal, Nawab Shujauddin of Bengal, and the Subadar of Bihar and Orissa settled in Orissa, attracted Muslims of different hues from Bihar and UP, civil and military administrators, peers, and saints. Most Muslim settlements and mosques and shrines owe their origin to this period. Historical records barely mention Takki Khan, but popular lore conflate Kalapahar and Takki Khan as destroyers of temples and idols. Iconoclasts also bent on looting the temple treasure. A short essay titled Takki Khan and Lord Jagannatha, published in the e-magazine of the Orissa government, titled Orissa Review in 2016, portrays Takki Khan as a greedy Muslim bent on looting the Ratno Bhandar of the temple. Details the several tactics Takki Khan deployed, including passing as a Hindu devotee and the recurrent obstacles he faced in carrying out his objective. Finally, when he did manage to hide inside the temple and enter the inner sanctum to steal the jewels from the idols, he was dazzled and almost blinded by the glow, the rage coming from the eyes of Lord Jagannatha, endearingly called Chokadora in Orissa, the one with large circular eyes. The blinding gaze was accompanied by the vision of hissing snakes rushing towards Takki Khan. He fell unconscious and was discovered by the priests next day. From the time he recovered consciousness, Takki Khan became a true devotee of Lord Jagannath. Takki Khan's greed for the temple jewels and treasure finds a close parallel with Jadunath Sarkar's depiction of Kalapahar's attraction for the jewels that adorned the deities and his loot of several images of gold from the Ratno Shinghashan of the temple as booty, an assertion not borne out by facts. Let us continue with the build-up of the emblematic iconoclast. In legends, drama, and short stories in Odia and Bangla, Kalapahar is referred to as Raju and Kalachand Rai or Kalidas Gajadani, a Hindu Brahmin, who fell in love with Dulari or Dulia, the daughter of Sultan Karrani, and married her. This resulted in his ostracization by Brahman Pandits of the Mukti Mandap Sabha of Puri, who scornfully rejected Kalachand's prayer to commit penance, seek expiation, and return to the Hindu fold. Thwarted and insulted, Kalachand turned him into a thwarted and insulted, Kalachand turned into a ferocious iconoclast, Kalapahar. This tale has had different variations in Orissa and Bengal, but the fact of his Hindu birth remains constant. If Persian accounts magnified his potency against Hindu gods and goddesses, Hindu histories in Odia and Bangla embellished Kalapahar's extreme villainy in distinct ways. In early 20th century Bengal, as indicated earlier, poetic imagination turned Kalapahar into the all-conquering Jugavatar, a frightening epical incarnation whose power, glow, and strength make mountains bow down. The suns glow pale, and gods and priests tremble with fear. Kalapahar, the audacious Nrishingha man-lion avatar, had appeared to do away with stifling tradition and errors of centuries, made human hearts beat again by removing the weight of the superstitious fear of hell, and turn the world upside down. This is from Mohitlal Majumdar's poem. In Odia plays and stories written between the 1920s and the 1970s, the liminality and nuances surrounding Kalapahar get somewhat diffused with depictions that are either empathetic to a person whose turn to vengeance is consequent upon his disregard and humiliation by the priests of Puri, or are full of wrath about the vileness of an iconoclast who does not stop at destroying temples and idols, but also violates Hindu women. Beginning with Prabhat Mukherjee, late 20th century historians have combed these legends, checked them for historical veracity, and arrived at different conclusions. All of them discard the idea of Kalapahar's Hindu birth. They proclaim him to be a full-blooded Afghan and contend that Kalapahar is a title rather than a name, a fact corroborated by Mahtub Ali, who mentioned that Munir Kalapahar was a title of all Muslim residents of a village lying between Khorda and Chilika. Kailash Chandra Das argues in a recent essay that the twists in the legends of Kalapahar were added only in the late 18th and early 19th centuries to bolster the linked efforts of social reform and reform of Hinduism in the 19th century. Till the end of the 18th, Kalapahar's Afghan birth was not very widely known. Hence, writers and reformers could innocuously introduce the fact of Kalapahar's conversion to Islam and his subsequent dangerous turn against Hindu Dharma from the end of the 18th century to counter conversion and argue in favor of a reformed Hinduism. Such efforts acquired greater significance over the 19th century, so much so that the Janashruti, hearsay around Kalapahar, his conversion and attack on the Jagannath temple found its way into Oriya newspapers in the last decades of the 19th century. Gaganendranath Das, on the other hand, an eminent historian who passed away 2 years ago, Gaganendranath Das, on the other hand, sees in the stories of Kalapahar attempts by the ritual functionaries of the temple of Jagannath to underscore the dangers inherent in the growing rigidity in the practices of the Jagannath temple and to advocate the reconversion of Hindus. If the potency of Kalapahar's kettle drum grew in magnitude in Persian sources over the 17th and 18th centuries, the single mention of Kalapahar in the manuscript of the Madhula Ponji was embellished by temple priests over the late 16th and 17th centuries to insist on the perils of making the Jagannath cult too rigid and of not allowing Hindu converts who sought expiation through penance to return to the Hindu fold. The Madhula Ponji credits Ramachandra Deva I with reinstating the worship of Jagannath in the temple at the end of the 16th century. For the German historian Hermann Kulke, it was a Muslim Subadar who, with the help of the temple priests, brought back the life substance from its hiding place in southern Odisha and had it reinstated in Puri in 1735, that is, in the third or the fourth decade of the 18th century. This was after the cult of Jagannath and Puri had become the fulcrum of a tripartite struggle between the Rajas of Khorda, the priests of the temple, and the Muslim Subadars at Cuttack. Leaving aside historians' concerns with Kalapahar and what they did or did not do to the cult of Jagannath and Hinduism, let us explore the discrete groundings of the persona or the metaphor of Kalapahar Takki Khan rolled into one. Just as Bukhari Sahib continues to be a revered shrine visited by subordinate groups of people of different communities, Kadam-e-Rasul, the shrine at Cuttack that also houses Takki Khan's Samadhi tomb, features among the most potent shrines in fulfilling people's prayers, wishes, and vows. Kadam-e-Rasul is associated with a fakir or a peer who is believed to have been in possession of a pot of water that had the Podo Chinho or the footsteps of Prophet Muhammad. This water, drunk and applied to the body of Takki Khan's Rani, a queen who had suffered for long from an incurable disease, cured her. A relieved and content Takki Khan made a grant of 1,000 acres of land to the Pir, the site of Kadam-e-Rasul. Famed to be a place that fulfills prayers and vows, this site, Muhatab Ali mentioned as an aside, has more Hindu visitors than Muslims. In a similar manner, Orthodox Muslims who have gone on Hajj do not visit Bukhari Sahib. And then there is Jahaniya Pir, who saved Puri and an extremely worried king from disaster by stopping the sea from sweeping into Puri by means of his charisma, a tale also recounted with the name of Kabir attached to it. The shrine of Jahaniya Pir is located in Kakatpur, Ashtaranga, very close to the sea in the district of Puri. A new tourist site for its location on the beach, the web page of Jahaniya Pir proclaims that the shrine follows no particular religion and is visited by both Hindus and Muslims. The rich and varied stories around Kalapahar, my colleagues in Odisha have commented, are current not just in Shambhalpur, but also straddle Ganjam and different regions far away from Puri and the temple, and serve to create an inverted kind of sacred geography, almost a clandestine sacred geography. These traces are subjugated or written over by an overwhelming focus on Jagannath. Before we conclude, let us take a closer look at Jagannath. Widely acknowledged to be a Shabara Devata who changed from Nilamadhav to Purushottam Jagannath, Jagannath is Buddha Jagannath, the ninth incarnation of Vishnu in Odisha. In classical formulation of Vishnu's avatars, we are aware, the ninth incarnation is the Buddha of Buddhism. It bears mention here that current Odisha, parts of ancient Kalinga, also houses Dantapur, an important Buddhist site, and Buddhism continues to retain a significant presence in Odisha. Puri, moreover, is not just the dham or abode of Vishnu Jagannath. It is at once Sri Khetra, the Kshetra dedicated to Sri Lakshmi, and a site of Shakti and Tantra. Devi Bimala, a tantric goddess, is the presiding deity of the Jagannath temple compound. The ritual functionaries of the temple, starting from the Raja of Puri, the Adya Sevak, the first servitor, worship the Devi in her different manifestations as their Ishta Devata, personal deity. Let us now try and cull out certain strands from these intertwined, muddled, and connected pasts. Liminal, betwixt, and mixed up figures such as Kalapahar, Takki Khan, and the lore about them abound in different parts of India. The work of my friend and fellow historian Shudipto Sen on the many lives of Zafar Khan, the Ghazi of Tribeni in Bengal, provides a lucid example. The question for us, therefore, is why and how do these mixed up and layered pasts result in histories that are demarcated and separated? What happens if we do not start with preconceived notions of what is Hindu and what is Muslim and try not to view them through the tropes of idolatry and iconoclasm? Do the palimpsests with visible traces of discrete blends induce us to think of indeterminate and multivocal pasts? Do these polyvalent and multi-layered pasts that can simultaneously speak of harmony and conflict, and of innumerable negotiations and accommodation, give new meanings to our notions of history and heritage, and inflect the ways we set about exploring and constructing historical pasts? And finally, Does an awareness of the play of power in the production of history and the absences and silences innate in historical retrieval help in constructions of diverse and open-ended narratives? I leave you to ponder these questions. Thank you.